Hi, I'm Nick.
I'm Logan.
And I'm Chloe.
And you're listening to
On Topic. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about gun control and whether states or government should hold the rights to guns.
Okay, so let's get into it. Many Americans have argued that state governments should have rights over gun laws rather than the government. I disagree. I disagree with this statement because I believe in a strong centralized government that has a constitution with many written laws that unites the citizens of the United States. A strong centralized government has more money for guns, and the laws created for guns by a strong government would be more stable than laws created by states. If the states created gun laws, they would be inconsistent and unreliable. What is the point of having strict gun laws in one state than driving a few miles to another state and easily buying a gun without any background checks or anything? Also, the biggest problem with guns nowadays is the amount of mass shootings and homicides. I believe the best way to fix this is by the government creating fair laws for guns, such as people can own guns, but they are required a background check and forced to take several shooting classes before being given the gun. This would make the laws for guns consistent throughout the United States. Although nobody but the government should have the right to military-grade firearms, it is extremely unnecessary. But anyways, let's get more into depth. The main argument against the government controlling our gun laws is gun control laws give too much power to the government and may result in government tyranny and the government taking away all guns from citizens. This is so incorrect. The government cannot take away our guns completely, considering it would be against the Constitution. The Constitution states in the Second Amendment, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," explaining that no matter what, we have the right to guns if needed. Also, the U.S. people have the right to overthrow the government if something does really go wrong. I believe the government should have this power, considering guns are used for worse as of right now. The Second Amendment is not a right to unlimited guns. The Second Amendment states that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state. This quote specifically says militia. This is because the founders felt citizens should be able to protect themselves against the government and any other threat to their well-being or personal freedom. The Second Amendment was meant for protection, not for people to go around murdering others. But that's what it has turned into, which is why the state shouldn't be in charge. The government can still protect us and our gun laws, but with better laws and making it harder to buy a gun. This is why they should have the rights over gun control rather than the states. Another reason would be, as I mentioned previously, more and stronger gun control laws would reduce gun deaths. Currently, the total number of gun deaths throughout 1999 to 2016 is 572,537 people. Guns were the leading cause of death by homicide with 67.7% of all homicides, and by suicide with 51.8% of all suicides. According to a March 10, 2016 Lancet study, implementing federal universal background checks can reduce firearm deaths by a projected 56.9%. Background checks for ammunition purchases could reduce deaths by a projected 80.7%. And gun identification requirements could reduce deaths by a projected 82.5%. This could be put into place by a strong central government so we can reduce the amount of gun deaths, which could completely change our society in the best way. With states in charge, we are not seeing the progress that we should be seeing when it comes to guns. They might say the violent people are the problem, not the guns. Well, first, there's nothing that we can do about people being violent. But there is a huge chance that if we take away the ease of getting a gun, we can heavily reduce the amount of deaths. Also, there's less of a chance of arguments turning violent if a gun is not present. Actually, the FBI found that arguments that occurred in 2013 resulted in 1,962 gun deaths, with that being 59.9% of total deaths in 2013. Another argument I have for why the government should have control over guns is that gun control laws would reduce the societal cost average with gun violence. More than 100,000 people shot in the United States each year generate emergency room and hospital charges of nearly $3 billion. A study in the American Journal of Public Health estimated that hospitalizations for firearm-related injuries cost Medicaid and Medicare $2.7 billion over 9 years. This is a huge effect on society. This makes people not want to go around these areas with a high homicide rating, which causes the value of housing to go down. The World Health Organization found that doubling homicide rates has been associated with 12.5% decline in property values. If we do not do something about this now, then eventually all of our cities will be like this. If the government could enforce very needed laws for guns, all states would be protected and all people would be protected. Also, our society would make a huge amount of money that could be used for better things such as healthcare. In conclusion, gun control laws should be taken up by the federal government rather than the state governments.
That's a very strong viewpoint, but what about you, Logan? What do you think?
I think it might not be the whole story. I've done some research of my own, and I believe that states should hold the right to decide gun control laws. First off, I'd like to start by talking about the lack of freedom. States like California, New York, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, and New Jersey need background checks just to buy ammo, not only guns. States like South Dakota and North Dakota, Wyoming and Montana, where the percentage of population with hunting licenses is over 20%, should not have to follow the same gun hunting regulations as states like California, Rhode Island, and Hawaii, all states with less than 1% hunting use. Each state should have the choice to choose how guns can be used, when they can be used, and where they can be used to better support their population. On the other hand, states like Maine, Vermont, West Virginia, and Mississippi, with between 60 to 62% rural population, should be able to have stricter gun laws or loosen gun laws based on what the population wants. With everyone spread out, these states suffer severely less mass shootings and homicides a year than other states, which would allow the states to be less stringent on gun laws. But also, rural areas need protection from wild animals who may threaten many of the state's farmers. This is why each state should be able to control their own gun laws. I'd like to bring up a point that you made earlier, Chloe, about how more and stronger gun laws would reduce deaths. So anyone who is strongly considering ending the lives of other people will find a way to get a gun, either by a secondhand buy, a gang, under the table, or black markets. Guns can be obtained anywhere at any time by anyone, regardless of gun laws. It has been proven by the U.S. Department of Justice that over 75% of all gun-related deaths and violences have been performed with a stolen or illegally obtained firearm. I'd like to talk about the suicide rates. People kill people and not guns. Anyone who is in the mindset that they don't want to be on the earth anymore has many other ways to go about killing themselves than guns. So it's not only guns that are the problem. The Second Amendment never put a cap on how many firearms you can own. It specifically states a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The rights of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, depending on the circumstances of each state, percentages of gun balances, and depending on how many guns are used in the state, should that be for hunting, recreation, or simply self-defense, that state should be able to make the decision for its own people. Having the federal government have control over gun laws provides less flexibility, and for each niche of each state, it makes it a lot harder.
Now that you've had a chance to hear both sides of the story, should the national government or the state government decide for gun laws? I have a few questions to ask you guys. Do you think it's possible to eliminate violence altogether by eliminating guns for the public? Will more strict gun laws actually diminish violence in America?
I do not think it's possible to eliminate violence altogether, but eliminating guns for the public would reduce violence rates by a huge amount.
Will more strict gun laws actually diminish violence in America?
Stricter gun laws will definitely lower violence in America, 100%. It will not completely get rid of it, but it will definitely lower it.
You both talk a lot about a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, but who will decide the number of firearms necessary?
I believe that the state should be able to decide personally. Each state knows its population, knows its people well, and knows what it will take to defend their area.
Should all the states be able to define gun laws for themselves? What would happen when transporting from state to state with different gun laws?
So each state should have its own right to control its gun laws. When you're talking about transporting from state to state, I believe we should create something like a gun tax or a gun ticket, which would allow you to transport from state to state, provided that you paid a certain amount or were licensed to.
Now that we've had a chance to hear from both sides, I think we should have the states decide most laws on recreational use and self-defense use, but when it comes to transportation and military-grade weapons, we believe that the federal government should inflict laws to hopefully better our community and stop violence in America.
On today's podcast, we learned how guns can be used for recreational and self-defense use. We learned how guns can be used for a whole country's benefit, and we learned how each state or federal government can implement laws to help further safety in America.
Thank you for joining us today. Signing off for On Topic, I'm Nick.
I'm Logan.
And I'm Chloe.
Catch you next week on Topic. Stay up to topic with On Topic.